Gentleman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Nguyen, let me come to you because the gentleman at the end of the table, Mr. Narang, said that guidance is non-binding. In your expertise, would you suggest that the agencies view all guidance as non-binding?
Regarding our past work, looking at guidance, guidance is typically non-binding, but for the IRS, we found that they consider their guidance to be authoritative because their examiners are bound by the statutes and what they're able to do. We don't have a particular recommendation in that.
So is there a statute that would say that the IRS guidance should be binding and all other agencies should not? Is there a statute that says that? Not an interpretation, but a statute.
If I may
sure.
No, there is no statute.
There is no statute, so there is no law that would suggest that the IRS guidance should be treated differently than other agencies. Is that correct? Is that your sworn testimony?
It's important to note why IRS, many of their...
I don't want you to opine. Is there a law that would suggest that the IRS guidance should be treated differently than guidance from other agencies? Yes or no?
There is no statute.
Okay. So if indeed there is guidance that they continue to put out that has the effect of law, would you suggest, and I'll let your counsel answer this, would you suggest that they're actually infringing on the legislative process of Congress if indeed they are putting forth guidelines and rules that have the effect of law but yet are not warranted by statute?
If the IRS...
I need you to speak into the mic.
Yeah. If the IRS is issuing guidance that is binding on the regulated community, the public, that would be a violation of the APA.
Okay, so, and I agree with you, and so let me tell you the problem that I have here is because they've issued a number of different guidances, and we have a letter before the GAO right now as it relates to what I call the silent returns and the fact of the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. And so as we're asking you, and I understand you only have 2 reviewers that review this for the entire GAO, is that correct?
Actually, we don't have a dedicated staff to these.
So it's even worse than 2 reviewers, okay? So as we go with this, here's my concern. If the IRS is able to do rules and regulation at the pace of 9 to 10 rules a day, and our action under the Congressional Review Act would require a laborious month, 2-month, 3-month process to overturn that. Do you see how Congress would be at a disadvantage of them encroaching in on our legislative jurisdiction?
Certainly, you know, the Congressional Review Act was intended to give Congress the ability to oversee agency rulemaking and to place a check on old rulemaking.
So would you also, would the GAO also, and as I say, we have a request there, indicate that if indeed the IRS has not followed a statute that would give them the ability to write guidance, then they are ignoring they do not have really a legal basis for that guidance other than a memo of understanding. How could it be binding on the American taxpayer if indeed there's not a statute that would support their guidance and rulemaking?
If a person affected by the guidance challenged that in court, a court could rule on whether it is...
So are you suggesting, since I'm affected by that, are you suggesting that we should file a lawsuit against the IRS instead of just actually overturning or giving Congress the ability to overturn that? I guess here's my concern, and I'll cut to the chase on this long, laborious line of questioning. We have a request into GAO. GAO is wanting us to check with the IRS and the Department of Treasury to have them opine on whether they believe that their guidance actually is mandated. And you're telling me today with this, testimony that they believe that they're in compliance. Why would we ask the very agency of whom they believe is doing it correctly to opine on whether they're doing it correctly or not? Why would it not be a GAO decision to say that this has the operation of rules and laws and is subject to the Congressional Review Act? And I'll yield back to the chairman, and if he gives you time to answer that, that's certainly within his purview.
I did find the gentleman's line of questioning to be long, but not laborious, so I would allow time for an answer in the fullest way you want to give it.
I'll be happy to answer the question. We've been asked to give an opinion on whether a specific IRS action is a rule for purposes of the Congressional Review Act. As part of our standard procedure, whenever we're asked questions of that nature, we do reach out to the agency because we need to hear their views on the law and come to an understanding of why it is that they did what they did, at least in their view. It's kind of like a judge, when he has to decide a case, has to get from both sides their view on the law. That's the process we're following. We're just trying to get the full picture legally so that we can hopefully make the right decision.
I do